Let's say you're working at a bank. Your job involves deciding who to lend to, who not to lend to, how much to charge for a loan. In other words, you make credit decisions. Whether you're a lender, a credit analyst, or a portfolio manager, your job is to make good decisions. You're always looking for an edge. You want to outperform your competition. So you stay abreast of developments in the industry. Well, one day, while you're cleaning up your files, you find a letter from Warren Buffett, one of his annual letters to shareholders. This is what he said in 1992. The industry is more important than the manager. So you wonder how much a company's industry matters in credit decisions. And then, should you factor in a measure of judgment? In the next 10 minutes, I have two objectives. I aim to convince you industry matters, building on Buffett's observation, then sharing some academic research, some ancient banking history, and pointing out what financial statements cannot do. Then I aim to show you that indeed judgment matters. I'll offer evidence from Buffett, from companies that supply banks with computer models, and from the controller of the currency. In 1997, two Harvard researchers looked at mounds of data to determine what made companies profitable. They proved that the second biggest factor was which industry the company was in. They showed that a company's industry accounted for 18 cents of every dollar of profitability. But how can we classify industries as good or bad? We all know what to look for when making personal loans, the tried and true 5 C's of credit. If you talk to some old-timers, you'll find out that bankers used to have similar rules of thumb to decide which industries to lend to. And they were quite simple. One rule was the 3 B's. Don't lend to beauticians, bartenders, or barbers. Another was the 3 P's. Don't lend to preachers, plumbers, and prostitutes. But these rules seem too simplistic. Maybe all you really need to look at are financial statements. What I didn't tell you is that the information you find on financial statements accounts for 31 cents of every dollar of a company's profitability. Financials are always the first place to look, but they're not intended to describe a company's industry. The left side shows why financial statements are necessary. They tell you about the past and the present. Of course, they tell you where the company stands financially. And when it comes to probability of default, companies default, not in. But the right side shows that they don't tell the whole story. They're backward looking, they might contain an element of fiction, and they tell you nothing about changes going on in the industry. The Cleveland Indians. Here's a true life example that shows a whole lot about financial statements. In antitrust testimony before Congress, Major League Baseball claimed the Cleveland Indians' revenue for 1998 at $125 million and 1997 at $113 million. When Dick Jacobs took 30% of the Cleveland Indians public in 1998, he had to provide financial statements to stockholders in a prospectus. The prospectus stated the same numbers. 1998 revenue at $144 million and 1997 revenue at $140 million. Wow, this is strange. What he said. Under generally accepted accounting principles, I can turn a $4 million profit into a $2 million loss, and I can get every national accounting firm to agree with me. But I'm probably being overly harsh. Not every company is so devious. Consider the company that grew to become the 7th largest corporation in the United States. At its epitome, its profits were $101 billion and employed over 20,000 individuals. It was named America's most innovative company by Fortune magazine for 6 consecutive years, from 1996 to 2001. It was on Fortune's year 2000 list of 100 best companies to work for in America. And the company was Enron. The crooked E. Endless possibilities of cooking the books. One more thing. Along with the problems with financials, don't expect them to alert you when the entire industry is about to be transformed, or maybe go out of business altogether. Just look at all these examples of industries that aren't what they used to be. So now we see that industry matters and financial statements have problems. Some banks and hedge funds and rating agencies have tried filling that hole with black box computer models. Let's see what the vendors of those very models say about augmenting their models with judgment. But first, another letter from Warren Buffett. Buffett is no fan of relying on computer models. As he said, models work when history repeats itself. Buffett said in this letter that if the past were an accurate predictor of the future, the Forbes 400 richest list would be full of librarians. He's not alone, but what's so fascinating is that the very companies who build sophisticated models, without exception, caution users to go beyond the models and factor judgment into their decisions. SAS warns its clients about an over-reliance on models. They say a comprehensive new credit risk framework is needed, a hybrid approach that combines the best that technology can offer with expert human judgment. Such an approach can help deal with the current crisis and may lessen the extent of or even prevent the next one. Moody says, sometimes important risk factors used in the rating process for certain borrowers cannot be sufficiently captured from the firm's financial statement. An effective rating system should balance the view of credit risk with the proper mix of objective facts and judgment. Moody's also says, a good internal rating system distributes credit risk across the organization among analysts, lenders, and senior management alike. SunGard. In a 2008 report, the Senior Supervisors Group, they are central bankers across the world, found that successful banks use a number of tools that draw on differing underlying assumptions. Successful banks had forward-looking scenario analyses. They balanced the use of quantitative rigor with qualitative assessments. Problem banks tended to apply a mechanical risk approach, accepting the estimates of their primary risk systems without challenges based on other tools and expert judgment. When the OCC talks about models, they include judgment. They go on to talk about approaches other than computer models. So here's where we are. I hope I've convinced you that industry information matters when making credit decisions, and expert judgment is a necessary piece of the credit process. If you'd like to see how banks use IBISWorld's website to improve their credit decisions, please check out Part 2 of this presentation titled Solutions. You can always reach me at 610-256-2387 or by email at stewarth@ibisworld.com.